Hello and welcome to Talk Lit, Get Hit, a podcast where we read questionable books recommended to us by social media and talk shit about them.
We're Bridget, Erin and Laura, three friends who haven't mentally progressed since high school, where we bonded over a love of music and books, but mainly Twilight.
Brace yourself for a heady cocktail of somewhat highbrow and incredibly lowbrow ramblings about all the books the internet loves and our journey to figure out why.
Love is in the air and our February episode is set to be a certified smooch fest. Reviewers have claimed that no one writes romantic yearning as brilliantly and believably, but we'll be the judge of that. Say hello to our February podcast pick, Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. Following along in our list of genres, we have reached February/our romance month, and on Goodreads, romantic comedy is showing up as romance, fiction, chick lit, contemporary, and humour. So once again, we will be the judge of that.
No one can say anything until they get the Talk Lit seal of approval.
Look, I don't think I have too much to say for the month of February, but I thought rather than having our usual catch-up, we could turn our minds to the deeply serious topic of the greatest romantic comedies of all time, either in film or written.
This is something I actually think about quite a lot. I'm going to start strong. I'm going to say Pretty Woman, one of the greatest romantic comedies of all time.
Big mistake.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. It's just iconic. And the whole scene with the piano in the hotel, downstairs, incredible. It's so good.
It is
I
nice.
don't care that he's older. I don't care that they are in completely different worlds. I think it's great. And the romantic gesture at the end when he shows up to quote unquote rescue her from her career. Also 10 Things I Hate About You, very strong rom-com, a classic. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I think that's a modern classic. I really rate that. You can't get past the bit where he's like, I'm going to make you fall in love with me. And she's like, I'm going to make you wish you'd never dated me.
I've never seen it.
What? Are you for real?
Yeah.
Huh?
This is my confession. So there's lots of these I don't know, 50 First Dates.
That's fine. Skip it.
Something about Mary, the wedding singer.
Skip.
I haven't seen any of those because they were in my Blockbuster era, slightly too mature, or so Mum said. And so we never watched them. And then I was like, ew, I don't watch films from the 90s once I got, the ability to do so on my own. I was like, present day, baby. I only watch Supernatural and Glee. So, yeah, I don't have many of the classics like that on there. My probably oldest film on the list would be Suddenly 30 or 13 going on 30 or whatever Americans call it.
I've never seen that.
I love that movie. Mark Ruffalo is such a sweetie pie in it.
That's so funny that you've never seen How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I think you would really like it.
Probably, yeah. It should be homework.
And you should watch Suddenly 30.
I have been told that.
It's so good.
Especially with February being my 30th birthday month and Laura's as well.
And then you can make you can use Facebook and then you can make your status 30, flirty and thriving. It's going to be so cool, Erin. You've got to do it.
It's going to be so cool when you watch the movie and get the reference.
It's not much to get.
Oh, okay.
She's just 30 and she's flirty and she's thriving.
Oh, okay. I get it. What else is on your list, Laura?
I don't know. I think the revelation was that I don't actually really watch or read that many romantic comedies. And I think probably the ones that I had on my list were quite tinged with tragedy. So I don't know if they fit the genre. Because one that I really like is About Time. But obviously that's a pretty devastating or upsetting movie.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a comedy.
It's funny in parts.
And it's romantic.
Yeah. So tick and tick. We've talked about it before, but Angus Songs and Perfect Snogging.
A classic.
To All the Boys I've Loved Before. I think that was probably my first present day foray into romantic comedy, and it was really cutesy and nice, and I thought that was great. And probably the only other one, I don't know if it, again, strictly fits the bill, but Scott Pilgrim would be there are elements of both. Yeah, I actually, looking through my list, it was slim picking, so I kind of made it up. I embellished the genre a little bit, sorry.
I think it's funny that you said To All the Boys and Angus Songs are romantic comedies because in my head, that's not a romantic comedy. That's a teen movie because I didn't think about them, and if I had, I would have had a much longer list. And also when you said that you didn't watch many movies from the 90s, that's like literally the only movies I do watch. And they're all movies I've seen before and I just watch them again and again. So first on my...
Very qualified. Yeah. Not to brag, but here we go.
First on my list is Notting Hill.
Oh, strong. Very
I have
strong.
seen that.
Incredible. Second on my list is Suddenly 30. My sister and I love that movie so much, and we got a DVD, I think, for like Christmas when we were quite little. Just a family classic. Also, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, 10 Things I Hate About You. And one that is a romantic comedy but isn't a romantic comedy is 500 Days of Summer.
Ooh.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's so good.
That's an interesting take. I don't know if I'd say that's a rom-com.
I wasn't sure, but
I feel like it fits on the list more, like it has more right to be there than the ones I chose. So I'll
Scott
give it
Pilgrim.
to you.
I opened up the letterbox page for 500 Days and it says it's an offbeat romantic comedy. And I was like, don't know if I agree, but whatever, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't offend me. I think it's good. I'll allow it.
Tick. Definitely looking at our lists, I'm by far the least qualified to be discussing the romantic comedy genre. But anyway, those are our credentials. Make of them what you will. Once again, you can't say shit. We're just trying our best every day, and that's all that can ever be asked of us. All right, now that we've got the official credentials out of the way, how were you feeling before you started reading this book? What were your thoughts, expectations, hopes, and dreams coming into romantic comedy?
When this book came out last year, I saw it everywhere. Everyone was reading it, and I have always been confused about what the book is about. I could have alleviated my confusion by reading the blurb, but I'm not one for reading blurbs. But the two covers are really different to me. I've never really understood how they are connected. So I think when we decided we were going to read this, I was excited to finally figure out what's going on with the covers. And that was really where my thoughts ended.
Putting the puzzle together.
I'm with you because I also knew it was kind of popular. I think subconsciously I thought it was probably not going to be a book for me. I think even though it was called romantic comedy, I wasn't expecting a romantic comedy. I was expecting something that was going to, like, I don't know, be more of almost a critique on romantic comedy. I also read nothing about it. And I kind of love going into pod books a little bit blind and not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, I would echo that. I know I read the blurb at some point, promptly forgot what it was about. So I did go in pretty blind. I was cautiously optimistic. I had read Rodham, which I thought was an abomination.
I've heard that exact review many times.
People bloody loved it though. Like some of my best friends loved that book. That's shocking. That's character revealing stuff. But I had seen good things about this from people that I normally share similar opinions to.
Respect.
Yeah. Mutual respect and understanding. Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to be discussing Bill Clinton's sex life. Yeah, I didn't really have any feelings. I kind of thought, yeah, maybe it will be for me because people are saying it's different to her usual stuff. I would agree about the covers, and the only thing that I would say is, same as you, I saw it everywhere, all over my Instagram feed, and so I thought it was going to be one of those books that had reached that level of being sold in like Kmart and Big W, but it was surprisingly difficult to get a copy.
If you haven't read romantic comedy yet and you don't want anything spoiled for you, this is your chance to get out now before spoilers ensue. Equally, if you don't want to hear some rude words or some very funny discussions, also get out. Content warnings for this episode include discussions of addiction, eating disorders, and the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic.
With a series of heartbreaks under her belt, Sally Mills, a successful script writer for a legendary late-night TV comedy show, has long abandoned the search for love.
But when her friend and fellow writer begins to date a glamorous actress, he joins the growing club of interesting but average-looking men who get romantically involved with accomplished, beautiful women.
Sally channels her annoyance into a sketch, poking fun at this social rule. The reverse never happens for a woman.
Then Sally meets Noah, a pop idol with a reputation for dating models.
But this isn't a romantic comedy. It's real life.
Would someone like him ever date someone like her? Says so much and so little.
I think I could do a short summary. What I liked about this book was learning about sketch comedy, and what I disliked about this book was pretty much everything else.
Look, I think that's pretty fair, and that's pretty close to how I feel about it. I really enjoyed like the first half of the book, and then afterwards I was like, okay, something's gone now. And I think it's because the TV show was gone.
I would say I didn't even enjoy the first bit.
Ooh.
I had a bad time from the start. It picked up a little bit when they started rehearsing for the sketches, but then the emails kicked in and then she went to stay at his house. And I was like, what is even happening in this book?
Oh my God, I'm so excited to
I
deep
know.
dive into this because I was genuinely worried that you two were going to really like this and I was going to be fighting for my life again.
There's so many things that are like almost erupting out of me.
I'm so excited.
Like those few sentences you both just said, I had like 50 tangents that I wanted to go off on. When I first was reading it, I started reading it and then I listened to some when I was out and about. So I had an audiobook and a like physical book experience. And initially I was like, oh, this is fine. You know, like it's pretty inoffensive. It's pretty middle of the road rom-com. And then after I finished it, I still kind of thought that it was all right. Like, I don't know, I wasn't actively annoyed, but the more I sat with it, the more I became like enraged. And the more I think about it, somehow like the more I forget and also become furious still.
I had a mixed media reading of it as well. I started reading it and then I was driving home from the coast, so I listened to it. And then when I got home, I read the end of it. And I honestly think the parts that I enjoyed was the listening because the narrator was really good.
I had seen some reviews that said that as well.
Yeah, so I feel like that gave me a little bit of enjoyment. But other than that, boring.
Oh, I'm so excited to deep dive into this.
Maybe we could start by talking about the structure of the book because I think that's one of my major gripes with the book and it is pretty unusual. It's told in 3 quote-unquote chapters. I don't know why she would do that because they're like each about a third of the novel. So the first chapter takes place on the set of T&O, which I only just remembered stands for the Night Owls.
For most of the book, I had no idea what it stood for.
Which is obviously SNL. So that's just what I called it in my head every time. So if I call it SNL throughout this podcast, just sorry about that.
Mind your own business.
Forgive us. We're just little babies.
So she's a comedy writer on SNL. And that was interesting enough. And she meets Noah, our male main character, in this moment. And then the second chapter is possibly one of my least favorite literary tropes of all time, which is emails. Just a whole chapter of emails. And then the third chapter is like, I don't even know where to begin with the third chapter. It's like an utter derailment where they go to spend some time with her stepdad. I just really don't even know how to begin talking about this story. It's such a hot mess.
I would say on structure alone, I didn't hate it. But I guess I also read most of it in one sitting. So personally, and I blame Mary-Kate and Ashley for this, but I love when there is some correspondence in a book. I love when there's like letters or emails or whatever. I think it's so cute. However, I did have gripes with the emails. You're telling me they wrote those fucking essay emails in like 5 minutes and shit? Like the timestamps on those emails did not add up to what they were putting in there.
There were 80 pages of emails.
I know. Isn't that crazy? After the first few, wouldn't you be like, fuck it, can we just pick up a phone and have a chin wag instead? Like,
it just seems like a really easy way to write about a lot of things.
Yeah.
definitely.
I feel like it's a cop-out.
It was info dumping. But I would say when that first email showed up and it was like, is this you or whatever, I was like, oh, it's exciting. Like 2 years later, middle of the night, he's thinking of her. I thought that was cute.
Our female main character is Sally Mills. And I would say a positive of this book is that I didn't dislike her too much. In a shock to the system. Too much. Not to say that I didn't dislike her. But
I love how Bridget and I pulled a face. And
yeah,
you're like,
immediate
not to say I
judgment.
didn't dislike her. I hate her, I promise.
immediate judgment.
Sorry.
I thought I
did
would
you like
hate her a
about
lot
her?
more. I thought I didn't like her.
Oh, okay.
I didn't dislike her too much. I thought that the setup of the novel of like, I'm just the most plainest, normalest, career-driven, ordinary woman in the world, and this handsome guy could never love me would make me hate her more. Like it's destined for failure. But yeah, I don't know. I thought she was reasonably inoffensive, and when I say that, I mean boring.
I would say there were parts that I did like of her, but I also think she had the biggest chip on her shoulder for no reason. she would just project all her shit on everybody else all the time, like even when it wasn't about that. I find her self-sabotage really frustrating to read, especially when there was no character progression for her, where she was like, I'm fucking this up for myself, so here's what I'm going to do to fix that. It's like she learnt nothing the whole time. She was just obsessed with being the most quirkiest woman in the world.
The most feminist, even though she's very disparaging towards models.
Yeah.
Yes, and those 3 women that work at
can't even
TNO,
remember
and she doesn't even know their names. They're interchangeable to her.
It's just jealousy. It's jealousy and it's envy because she thinks that they're prettier than she is. She even admits that she doesn't take Autumn that seriously until she realizes how good she is at her job. And it's like, you are part of the problem here.
None of her overreactions made like a single iota of sense to me.
No.
I'm actually speechless about her because she was an idiot.
Yeah, and I thought, like, she's a hypocrite because she has that go at Noah for only dating 22-year-old models, but then actively encourages her best mate to hook up with that 52-year-old. And it's like, why are you making these different rules for different people? Also, who cares if Noah is dating 22-year-old models?
Who cares about anything she talked about?
I know. And because they had hinted at the divorce and stuff a few times, I thought we were going to get quite a juicy story out of that when she eventually revealed it. That would make some of it make sense. And while I did kind of enjoy that it was a he never believed in me situation, that doesn't explain any of her hang-ups. That says nothing for why she pushes everybody away or anything like that.
I think she's kind of so inoffensive to me because she's on par with all of the other characters who are all equally boring and equally shallow and like, I don't know a single thing about any of them. Why is like the main chip on Noah's shoulder that is bald? Why is that like the number one conflict that man has? Same as her, like you said, like her problems are made up. She had a divorce and she had unrequited love. Her dad potentially killed himself. Her mother chose to believe he did it by accident. And she mentions fleetingly that she has depressive episodes and I assume like deep anxieties and insecurities, but none of these are ever built upon. I don't know. You guys are making me hate her a lot more, but I feel like it was a relief to read about an older woman like not dealing with the same predictable problems that I think we find in like the younger, I don't know, like Icebreaker, Wildfire type books. They were able to communicate reasonably well. Even though she had these like stupid meltdowns, they were resolved extremely quickly. But at the same time, it was very depressing to see an older woman create these problems in the first place.
Because I think the only times I actually liked her was when she was interacting with Danny. And I think Danny was quite a good character, but maybe that's just because I kind of like Pete Davidson. But I thought she was okay with him and she was okay with her friends. Like when she was playing that mentoring role, I actually quite enjoyed her.
100%, I agree. That's the only time I liked her.
Yeah, and like when she was mentoring Noah on how to fix the script, I really liked that scene and I thought they had quite good like blossoming tension. And when he like actively sought her out at the after party and then she just fucks it up out of nowhere with this really out of pocket comment that he did nothing to deserve. And it makes no sense because up to that point, she has never once proven to be someone who is like nasty or malicious like that. And then he does nothing to provoke her and it just comes out of nowhere.
Her character did not make sense to me.
No.
At all.
But even at the party, like where she says that weird out of pocket comment and then that really, really lazy writing where she's like, after that, 3 things happened. The first thing that happened was this. The second thing that happened was this. And the third thing that happened was this. And then it was the pandemic. And I also felt like their almost kiss was not as like, I don't know, it was cute, but I kind of wanted something more from it.
And he even said later on he wasn't going to kiss her.
Roasted.
But she thought he was.
Yeah. And that was
he
annoying.
said, I wasn't going to kiss you in front of all your workmates.
Yeah, as a celebrity, like.
So she just stuffed it up. Yeah, as if he's not conscious of privacy and intimate moments.
I was also confused because like in that scene, they don't move. So she says, I get a drink from a bar, I turn around and Noah's there. So they're having that whole fucking conversation in front of the bar. The bartender's there probably like cleaning one glass for 20 minutes.
Can I just get around you? The guy behind you wants to order a drink. Sorry, guys.
They're just in everyone's way. There's no way they were about to pash on in front of the bar. But I don't know. Certain things were working, and then for some reason, even though Sally was self-sabotaging, it's like the author was also self-sabotaging. Like she was building to something and she was like, fuck it, I can't do that. That's too much like a romantic comedy, which it's like, I know this is a critique of romantic comedies, but actually you're not saying anything about romantic comedies. Like,
I would say this novel is trying to be three things at once. It's trying to be a romantic comedy. It's trying to be a pandemic novel. And it's also trying to be a fun workplace comedy or like some sort of novel about like women in the workforce. And I don't think it does a good job at any of those things. It can't be those three things at once, at least not in its current iteration. I thought like structure wise or like with the overall through line throughout the book, I thought it was an utter shambles. And that's probably my main beef with the book, like more so than the characters. It's like the way that things are set up in this book dooms them to fail. I was going to hate this book from the get-go, because it doesn't even know what it's trying to be.
Which I think is really interesting because I really enjoyed the Saturday Night Live style vibes. And even though it was a lot of information about how the show worked when you didn't need that much information about how the show worked, I really enjoyed the insight into how quick and how fast everything happens on those shows. But I really enjoyed the bit where she talks about the structure of a joke and a sketch and how to make it work and get that payoff. And I think it's really ironic that they spent time doing that and then had a book that had no structure and no payoff at any point.
Also, romantic comedy was the name of the book that had not a single funny joke. First reason I was thinking is it like reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes or another book where there's lots of songs or there's poems like Daisy Jones and the Six? I think we talked about in those episodes that it's hard to really take those things seriously when you're reading lyrics that someone has written. I was also wondering if it's just because, to me, I sort of find SNL a bit cringy and I don't think it's that funny. But maybe it's because I'm not American. I don't really care about SNL as a sketch comedy show. It's not really my kind of humor. But then I also think it's like an elder millennial vibe. It's like she's almost a Gen X living in San Francisco in the late 2000s. And she has a mustache tattoo on her finger. And she listens to like Arcade Fire, drinks cold brew coffee and whatever. Like I just feel like it's maybe not my kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think it's a few of those things at once. It was really confusing because SNL, to my understanding, while trying to be funny, they also really pride themselves on making like political statements or whatever. And there was a lot of politics in this book, rightly or wrongly, but almost none of it was in the comedy or the quote unquote comedy. Like
it made no sense. And like every time the politics were brought up, I was like, shut up. When she first was talking about Danny and how they first bonded the night of the presidential election and they fell into each other's arms sobbing.
I would say the most like egregious one was when her and Noah were emailing and they were talking like indirectly about like BLM and George Floyd, and she told this witty anecdote about how she'd seen a woman with a Good Vibes Only t-shirt, a white woman. And she was basically like read the room, guys, like read the political climate, and made absolutely no further comment on it. That sucked.
There was a lot of performative activism in this, and like really hate to say it because it was set in a real time, and I feel like they weren't saying anything because they actually meant it. They were saying it so that the readers would be like, oh, see, they're good guys.
Yeah, when she said to him, did you go to any BLM protests?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that whole conversation.
And when she has this like moment of reflection about how Viv is getting all these apologies from white women or whatever, as if white women are only just now figuring it out. And it's like, how is it Sally's position as a white woman to be critiquing any of that? If that's how Viv feels, that's how Viv feels. But why are you acting superior than everyone else? Because you quote unquote knew about racism before this. Like,
I have lots of black friends, actually.
yeah, like you don't get an award for that. It is yet another example of her being the exact thing she claims to hate, because she's bringing these women down and bringing people down generally that are just trying to do better and be better.
She made a comment saying something like, the BLM protests were getting really huge now, but some people have known about them for years. Like, she wanted a medal for being...
Yeah, like gatekeeping it. And that's what I mean by like the performative activism. And I wish they had done a bit more with Noah's plot point, because there was a moment in, I think it's the Saturday Night Live part, where he says, oh, I'm never quite sure how political I should be as an artist. And then he says later, yeah, I went to the Black Lives Matter protests, but I didn't want anyone to know I was there. So it's like he didn't even progress and be like, okay, I'm going to use my platform completely with this. He was, I'm just going to do it in secret and hope no one notices.
In my mind, this book is the same as Red, White and Royal Blue. It would have really hit in like 2015. But this is more egregious because it was released in 2023. This book is new, but reads as though it's something from 10 years ago. And it has that brand of feminism that is girl power, girl boss, but only for me, only in my career.
It's white feminism.
Yeah.
And that's obvious with all the references to Hillary Clinton. Like, that alone dates this.
I mean, are we shocked she did write that Hillary Clinton like fanfic?
Smart.
And she also, like, one of her earlier novels was called The American
Woman or something.
Wife or something like that. That was loosely like it was a fictionalized story about Laura Bush. I mean, I know it's something that we go back and forth about, or we talk about quite often on the show. You know, like if you're going to bring up a political issue or a social issue in a novel, how much are you required to make an actual comment on it? And I think, like, yes, to a degree, like it's a stance in itself to bring it up in the first place, like to bring some sort of awareness to that issue or whatever it may be. I think her stances were clear to a degree, but it just stacked on and on and on, like tick, tick, tick. Like it was probably one of the most tokenistic exercises or examples of political commentary that I've seen. It must be a tricky line to walk because first and foremost, this book is also trying to be so many things at once. I don't think that it would benefit from doubling down or making sort of any meaningful comment on the political or like social issues it's brought up. Like it has comments on like addiction issues, like body issues, the treatment of celebrities in the media, relationship double standards between like males and females. And I don't think it digs deeply into any of those, but I was kind of going back and forth in my head thinking how much more could she have said about these things without further derailing her already off the tracks novel.
But I think it's really interesting that she raised political issues. It's obviously based on Saturday Night Live, which don't shy away from making political statements. She made reference several times to people who work for this show aren't afraid of offending people, but yet made no even slightly potentially offensive statements that would progress her political statements. Because the statements were there throughout. Like even Noah was like, in one of his emails, he talks about meeting the Obamas and how he didn't remember certain things because everything pales in comparison to meeting the Obamas. Like, sick, but also what are you actually trying to say here?
Also, Obama's a war criminal.
I mean, they're all war criminals, but it's like...
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right.
But what I actually thought you were going to say before, Bridget, was that you wished this book, like Red, White and Royal Blue, was fully set in a different universe. Because I saw a lot of commentary online about how they were confused, like Trump was real, Hillary Clinton was real, but these characters obviously pulled off Pete Davidson and potentially Ariana Grande, not real. Like, where is the line of what's real and what's not real?
Some real music artists, some not.
Confusing.
Weird.
Yeah.
Also, Sally listens to country. Are you for real?
I did not pick up on that.
Yeah.
That's a red flag.
Linda
I
Watson.
would have had a more searing assessment of her if I knew that.
She listens to country and then acts like she's better than his music. And like, I imagine Noah's music to be like Niall Horan vibes. Like
yeah,
that
were
kind
you
of...
picturing, like, who were you picturing him as? Because I struggled because once again he was blonde and so I was like, cancelled, like, ignore that.
I was picturing him as Jesse McCartney. Simply
That's a child.
because, well, he was a child when he started though. Like he's been in the business 15 years, I guess. And what is he, 36? So he was pretty young when he started. The reason why I was picturing Jesse McCartney, I was just thinking about, I don't know, just the music culture at the time wasn't really singer-songwriter vibes for men. It was boy band.
2016. Yeah, and
No, like 2003 or whatever when his first song came out.
Oh, I thought it came out.
Oh, that's deep.
Oh,
I thought
2001. You're right.
2001. It's like 15 years. So I couldn't really reconcile 2001 with singer-songwriter blonde surfer man.
I don't often picture people, and I think it's because the names are similar. In my head, he was the boyfriend from Schitt's Creek, David's boyfriend. I think that actor's name is Noah or something.
It is.
And so that's all I was seeing. And I think now is the time to admit that for maybe half the book, I thought it was set in England. And I no idea why.
How?
I have no idea.
That's
Just
so weird.
for ages, I was like, yep, these people are all British. And then they said that Noah was from California. And I was like, okay, slight accent change for Noah. I was just convinced.
That's so weird.
It was like the British Saturday Night Live in my head. I have no idea.
And they're just big fans
Saturday
of Hillary
afternoon
Clinton.
live.
Yeah, like
I ignored the descriptions and I was kind of vaguely picturing him as like Hosier, even though he's not blonde. But I thought I heard a rumor once that he was secretly bald, but I don't know if I'm actually just getting that confused with the like Harry Styles is bald, very popular rumor. Anyway, that was all. I didn't think about him too much or picture him very much, but
No.
I did Google blonde male musician to get some inspo, and it was like, honestly, like a horrific feast for the senses. It was Machine Gun Kelly. It was Eminem. It was young Justin Bieber. It was like, who's that naughty boy? Adam Levine. And then I got onto this crazy listicle that was like 41 musicians that took the plunge or whatever. And then it was the most boring, mundane article of like musicians that had dyed their hair blonde. It was like, in 2014, Adam Levine took the plunge and dyed his locks platinum. What do you guys think? It was deranged. Anyway, I definitely did a lot of research for this podcast.
I thought that Noah was inoffensive. I didn't really have a single thought about him other than that because I found him quite boring.
he had potential, and I feel like he was quite reasonable. But going back to something Laura said earlier, that Noah's like biggest plot point is that he's going bald. I fully agree that was like made out to be his biggest plot point. How about the fact that his drummer fucking died because of him and he had these addiction issues? Like, that is arguably a much bigger plot point.
What about when he was like, I was really worried that the media was going to say that it was my fault. Luckily they didn't. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And it's like, oh, he gave some money to the girlfriend of the
$1
drummer
million
that died for the baby that they apparently had. Like, what else are you doing? Like, I feel like that should have been a much bigger plot point. I quite enjoyed the commentary about like his parents and how they didn't really care until he met the Obamas or whatever.
I didn't care anything about that.
Well, I just think that gave him some depth that Sally didn't have, but weight was given to the wrong elements of that. And he was talking so much about his therapy and how she needed therapy, which is great. She did need therapy, but it's almost like he got therapy because of his parents, not because he killed a person.
That is alcohol addiction.
Yeah, like those were his driving forces in my mind, and that is what made him interesting.
So much focus was put on stupid elements in this story. Like, for example, how we had to hear about her besties, like taco burps, like burrito burps, whatever, like at least 3 times. I honestly, like 2024, I'm not afraid anymore. It does not include burps. That physically repulsed me
What
every
about
time.
the coffee flavored chips?
Yes.
that
Oh my
we had
God.
to keep hearing about.
Oh my God.
There were really weird things that she just like made up, and she just clung on to them for a really long time.
Like the detail about his housekeepers and like where they live and like what their summer plans are. And then like so many named characters on the TNO set that just didn't need to be named. You know, like in one ear, out the other. I don't care who that person is, and they're never mentioned again.
As well as the sketches. We heard about the ones that were cut so often. Had to keep hearing about the 3 tenors and the news desk one. And also not even the names of the sketches, but who wrote them. we had to keep hearing about the airplane scene where Noah and the friend were like doing the airplane thing on the legs and the arms.
Yeah,
Yes.
What?
Which isn't funny. That's
It's
not
funny.
funny.
Also, that would not happen.
No.
As if somebody would be like, yeah, cool, get on my feet and hands. I'm going to pretend you're an airplane. It's not funny. You're 35, 36.
It reads like a love letter to SNL, and that's fine, but make that the story, because that is
Yes.
what was interesting. I really enjoyed knowing that people just like slept in the office because the hours were so fucked on recording week or whatever. But that never actually became relevant. I was expecting to see that, I don't know, the emotions were really high because no one had slept a lot, and so something went awry, or maybe Noah snuck into her office and slept there because he couldn't find where he was meant to be. Like,
It's also something that Curtis Sittenfeld did a lot of research about as well, because I was wondering if she'd worked at SNL, because I thought, wow, this seems pretty in the know. But like, I'm reading this article from Variety, and she says there's an oral history of the Saturday Night Live, which has been revised and expanded. And she's read a bunch of memoirs like Tina Fey's, Amy Poehler's, Rachel Dratch, Tracy Morgan. So, I mean, names that I know as a non-SNL fan. Like, I think that's pretty big news. She listened to like Conan O'Brien's podcast, Mark Maron's podcast. She did a lot of research about this. And so I just think that, like you said, this is where she should have kept it.
I'm someone that reads acknowledgements at the end of the book. She acknowledges SNL hosts and those things. Not a single romantic comedy is referenced. She was not writing a romantic comedy. She doesn't want to write one, and that's fine. But why are you saying that that's what you're trying to write?
I would have really liked the whole book to be just the whole week. But speaking of the schedule, I have some improvements I think they should make.
I look forward to it.
If they are spending all night working and writing sketches, blah, 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 as we had to keep hearing about, one, get a union. Two, just don't do that. Instead of starting at 5 p.m. Tuesday afternoon, maybe start at 12. Start earlier, you finish earlier. You don't need to all be staying there at nighttime. It makes no sense. Also, Monday 1 p.m. pitch meeting with guest host, start at 9. Get it over and done with so you can get your work done. How are they not stressed all the time?
Yeah.
There's so many hours that are not accounted for. You can still sleep because you get home late and not start work at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night.
I think she tried to explain this away.
Yeah, she
with
said
a
that
few
she said it's
sentences.
like tradition.
Yeah.
It's not the 80s anymore. People have lives outside their jobs. They're not on cocaine all the time.
And she even made a point of saying that, hey, like that everybody thinks that they're having these like drug-addled like parties and like staying up all night on these benders, but they're actually like into wellness and I don't know, taking care of their bodies.
They're trying to be like cool kids, but really they're not. They're just like a bunch of nerds sitting around in a stinky room all night.
I'd have a breakdown after like 3 days in that job because of my sleep schedule.
But I think it's unrealistic to be expecting of your employees to start work at 5 p.m. until 12 the next day.
All the nurses in our comments are like,
bitch, please.
Yeah, but this is like a job that doesn't matter. Like,
Excuse you. It does sound pretty sick though to be able to like, I don't know, have your morning free, go for a late brunch, toddle into work at 5 o'clock, write some shit, have a nap on the couch.
and get paid $12,000 per episode.
Yeah, like it sounds pretty sweet. I'd be doing that.
The last thing I want to say about Noah is, why does he like Sally?
It's a great question.
I get that they had their sexy little writing session, but that went for 10 minutes max. She was rude to him most times they talked. And also just the chip on her shoulder was unbearable to read about. So I don't know how he could stand to be in a room with her.
I was wondering this because I really felt like their interactions in that week at the show were not in any way interesting or intriguing enough to warrant the follow-up communication. Like, why would that still be on his mind? I don't understand what conflict or intrigue or like tension he was getting out of that.
Didn't he also say like towards the end that he liked her because she was smarter than him? The bar is on the floor.
I have found a really funny review from someone called Trish on Goodreads. And it's a great summary, I think, to end our discussion about Noah and Sally as characters. So basically, romantic comedy is about an ugly, divorced 40-year-old woman, and at no point in the book does she let you forget how ugly and unwanted she is, who writes for SNL despite being the least funny main character I've ever had the displeasure of reading. Sally is convinced that men don't date her because she isn't pretty, never taking into account that she has the personality of an unsalted cracker. And then down the bottom, after whinging about the structure of the book and the COVID derailing of the plot, it says, "This is a rare, I'd give it 0 stars if I could rating." And honestly, I agree. Thank you, Trish.
Thanks, Trish.
So we have kind of spoken about how their relationship doesn't make any sense, but it sort of comes about as an inverse to this sketch that Sally is writing called the Danny Hurst. I already forgot. See? Forgot everything about this stupid book and these stupid characters. But anyway, she's taking a deep dive on the theory that hot women date average men.
And that the reverse is not possible.
The reverse is not possible. And I guess this book is a very funny, smart, witty inversion of that.
It's so on the nose in this book. She spends so long spelling out this theory instead of just doing it with some level of nuance. At no point are you like, maybe they won't. It's so obvious what the agenda here is. I don't know if this terminology is worldwide, but in Australia we use it a lot, punching above your weight and like dating someone of a higher caliber than you. I just think it's so rude and it's so unnecessary, and it really narrows a relationship down to something that it isn't.
It is a shitty, reductive kind of way of looking at a relationship. And I also thought in that section in the book when he says to her, "I didn't think you were amazingly stunning when I met you, but I thought you were really interesting, like a nice person," or whatever he says. I found it really depressing that that kind of realization had to come to her via a man, for her to be like as big a feminist or whatever as she professes to be, to see the world through such a narrow lens was just bleak. Depressing again, once again.
In the situation where the guy is like quote unquote punching and the girl is more attractive for whatever reason, it's often used as if the guy is being really selfless and like recognizing his flaws or whatever. It's almost used as a compliment to the girlfriend, like, "Oh, they're so much better than me. They're perfect. They're beautiful, whatever." I feel for Danny because the whole skit is obviously meant to be in fun or whatever. But I think it would be really hard to have your relationships ridiculed on a national, if not international scale, that you are not as hot as your partner and everybody knows it and everybody's laughing about it. Like, that's fucked up.
Yeah, you're not worthy of your partner. Like, no other aspect of your personality is redeeming, like, or makes you quote unquote worthy of your partner. It made me think about when Jenny Slate was dating Chris Evans. I don't know if you remember that or if you knew about that. Do you know who Jenny Slate is?
No.
She's Mona Lisa in Parks and Rec. She is the voice of Marcel the Shell with Shoes. She was on SNL. Yeah.
I didn't know that was.
Very, very funny. I guess like not a conventionally like Hollywood attractive woman, still extremely pretty and extremely bright and funny. Basically, they've both spoken about it and said that the heat that they were copying on their relationship for her not being hot enough for him, or not the person that his fans thought that he should be with, was the end of their relationship, basically.
I know the whole thing is like a girl would never be in Danny's situation. But if a girl was in that situation, they would never make a skit like that about the situation. And I suspect the book is meant to be the skit on that situation. But it's not funny enough to do it, and it actually doesn't prove anything.
Instead of having it be about, I'm so ugly, he's so hot, why couldn't it be, he's so famous, he's so recognizable, I am just a writer at SNL that is backstage. Why couldn't it be about the famous thing instead of the hotness thing? It makes no sense to me, and it would have been way more enjoyable.
Because you kind of do have that story quite often as well, like, oh, Natalie Portman and her director husband, and you're like, oh, I've been conditioned to believe that they're not the same caliber of person because she's on the front of the screen and he's just behind the screen piddling away. Like, I think that's a way more palatable kind of message. That's a good point.
They flag it a little bit in the story, so I'm not sure why it didn't play more of a role, especially when like the paparazzi show up at the end and he drops her hand and she was like, why did you drop my hand? Do you think I'm ugly? Like, relax, babe. Like,
and then like the resolution to that is when he's like, oh, I just thought that you would want to be private about it or whatever he says. And then she's like, oh yeah, you're right. That was really thoughtful. And like,
I do actually want that. Oops.
When they're emailing back and forwards, there were so many miscommunications on her end for the most part, but they would be resolved in the next email. I'm sure people talk in this way somewhere. Like I know if Brown and I have disagreements, it's more likely to go down that kind of route than a screaming match where we're like, I just can't be in the same room as you. I don't know if I can trust you anymore, or like whatever third act breakup like there's going to be. So that's great. Like, you know, nice to see people use their words. But at the same time, I feel that we don't see that in books very often because it's so boring to read. It was so unmemorable. It was so bland.
I could never understand also how quickly these miscommunications happened. When he sent an email and she came back and she was like, you're 1000% not a narcissist. And he came back and he was like, whoa, I feel like I've upset you. I was like, what the fuck just happened?
It's like, have I missed something?
I did not read anything into that response from her until he was like, whoa, I've messed up. And then I was like, this is nonsense. If you are treading on eggshells like that, just don't do it. I think this is probably a good time to transition into the discussion about like the pandemic. The pandemic is a plot device in the story.
Yes.
Overall, I'm not about it. I don't like it. I thought it came out of nowhere. I think it instantly dates the novel. I think it doesn't sit well with me because that is not the experience people were having. And it seems really like fairy tale-ish to be like, I know all this bad stuff was happening, but we were falling in love instead.
I wholeheartedly agree. I really hated this aspect of the book and I felt it really cheapened the COVID-19 experience. But I think just the use of it as a plot device was so deeply disrespectful. And then to further that, to have the random, to be honest, like near-death experience of Jerry, who's just been like a side character in my eyes, as a plot device for your characters to sort of like have some romance further spurred on. I thought that was like truly bizarre. And just like another storyline that was added in and not done justice. And then just like the fact that they rock up and Jerry's like in shit and they're like, oh my God, we've got to clean Jerry's shit. And it's like so drastic, but this is like the last third of the novel. But they're still like finding time to be like, but he's so cute. Like, he's so cute. And like, oh, the neighbor's there as like a little bit of like levity to be like, I'm sorry to pry, but was that famous handsome man? It was
I'm sorry,
so
but it's
disrespectful.
It's so funny. Like, Jerry's dying, you guys. Like, he is literally fucking dying. And you're all like, oh my God, is that Noah? Oh, hey, Noah.
It was despicable.
And when she's like, do you even know how to shop at Target?
Oh, God.
You for real? How is that at the front of your mind? Your stepdad is dying.
Oh, God. And I think actually she does make some comment about it as well. But I think the COVID storyline is so stupid as well because like the emails, I mean, I pretty much always hate emails in a book. I think it's like lazy story writing. I think because of like the knowledge of the random shit we were doing in 2020, like I'm getting into sourdough, or, like I'm going to learn to crochet. Like it definitely gives us the air of like, oh, he had nothing better to do.
Yes.
And I think like they do sort of address like, oh, who else was he emailing? Or like, was he just hitting up people? That man was bored.
Yes.
That man had nothing else going on.
Yeah. And I actually think this is made worse by the short time frame that they're emailing in. Because it would have been so different if, for, I don't know, the first few months or maybe even the first year of COVID, they're emailing every couple of days, touching base. But instead it's like every 2 hours, every day for a week. And then they're like, fuck it, I've got to drive across state lines to see this man.
It would have made more sense as well if it was over a longer period of time, because then at least the pandemic would have been at a later date. For me, what I was thinking about was like, you are so worried about Jerry's sister. You're shopping for them. You don't let them leave the house because Jerry's sister is immunocompromised or something. But you're going to email this guy for a week. You've got a chip on your shoulder about him already. Like, you're always having breakdowns about this man. You're going to get in the car. You're going to drive across the country, picking up who knows what variant of COVID,
Yeah,
honestly.
across the way, yeah.
Brushing your teeth in service stations everywhere.
Gross.
And then you're going to go to this man's house, and because you're in a pod now, that's fine. You can have sex for 3 times in the afternoon or whatever. And we've got to hear about it and how he jizzed on her stomach
Never
and
more, never less.
mess on her stomach and blah, 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 blah. But that's all fine because they're in a pod now. And then, oh shit, Jerry's sick. Let's go back.
Fuck the pod.
I forgot about COVID. We're going to go give him more COVID. He's dying. And then they get there and then like the doctor comes in his full hazmat suit. They're just walking around the house in masks. It doesn't really help if you're next to this man who's shit the bed and you're in the shower with him and like you're like trying to look after this man who is dying. And then you're hanging out with the neighbors. It made me so annoyed. There was stupid things. So if they had like left it until 2021, like it still would have been a bit insane, but like maybe not as dangerous.
But I think also at least then it would have felt like they'd actually been pining.
Yeah.
He gave the vibes that, yes, he'd been pining for her since that time. There is nothing on her side to suggest she's been pining. On the flip side of that, you're telling me that someone who made up in her head that she was in love with her coworker and made up this completely one-sided thing, you want to tell me she's been pining for him for 2 years and now that she's got the chance, she's going to be like, fuck yeah, let's go, boys. No, she would be damaged from that first pining opportunity. Like, she's already done this once. She's not about to do it again.
I believe pining opportunity is the technical term.
When she said, were you trying to seduce me? And he was like, no.
Oh, that's so funny.
You know, maybe it should be my catchphrase, but like, where is the yearning? Like, they didn't even kiss. They didn't even have any sexual tension in that first moment. Like, they're like, why? Why were they talking? What were they getting out of those conversations with one another?
Trauma dumping, free therapy.
And it's so funny because the author is like credited as writing yearning and pining really well. And I love a yearn. I love a pine. But
there was zero yearn.
No.
There was zero pine.
Because what was meant to be yearning and pining were really brief moments on the TNO set.
And Jerry shitting himself.
Like, Jerry's not even real, but I feel so sad for Jerry.
I love Jerry.
That he has had all his, like, baggage just strewn across the floor for everybody. Everybody knows Jerry shit the bed.
When she walked in and she was like, I could smell feces. I was like, wait, what? Is this man going to die? That was the only part where I was like actually invested because I was like, I love this man who emails about pup cakes. And is this little man going to die in a bed of his own shit? Like, I was so worried.
Jerry was sweet because, like, I liked when she was like, oh, Jerry doesn't even watch the show, but he tries to give me notes
Jerry.
because that's what my mum did. Like, that was nice. Why the fuck was he so fucked up at the end? Like, he could have had COVID without shitting the bed.
Because I feel like she was trying to be like, by the way, this was a serious pandemic.
It was really bad.
People died. But it was just such a bad tonal shift.
I can't believe she left him to start with. He's
clumsily.
80.
I know, with like no backup plan. And she was like, oh, I'm going to go see a friend.
Sick? I don't know. The dog will just be wandering around the neighborhood.
Poor Sugar. Poor little beagle. I know what you're saying, Laura. And I agree. She was trying to make it seem really serious. And obviously it is serious. It could have been serious without him shitting the bed. Like,
Yeah.
but also like the unnecessary details in it when Noah was like, oh, we should probably feed him. Does he have applesauce? And she's like, no, he doesn't have applesauce.
How do you know?
Like, what beef does Jerry have with the applesauce? He's like, get that shit out of my house.
He was like, pudding. This poor 80-year-old man, she just left him to go bang this guy.
That's so true. I didn't even think about like the fact that he was so old.
She was grocery shopping for him and she was like, he'll be fine. I'll take the car and go.
But not only that, like she inserted herself in his life when COVID started because she didn't want to be on her own in New York. And then when Noah comes along, she's like, fuck you, old man, I'm out of here. I'm off to get laid.
Didn't reply to his email about the pub case.
So mean.
Oh, she's a horrible person.
Love you, Jerry.
Jerry for life.
Oh, okay, you guys have deeply changed my tune about Sally. You know what? Probably 80% of it was me just so desperately not wanting to hate a female protagonist again. And be like, oh, the guy was pretty nice though.
Do we have any rapid fire quotes that we want to share?
Yeah, I have some. So another tick for this episode, we did get a birth control conversation.
Oh, it was so annoying.
Yeah, it was super annoying.
I didn't like it in the sense that they were already fucking and that was the time to be like, oh yeah, I'm on birth control, by the way. Maybe should have done that first. But also she only told him so he would come inside her, which is like, and then they were both like, oh, I'm clean, by the way. Like, again.
After the fact.
You probably should have spoken about this before round one started.
Also, when she was like, I woke up in his bed. I didn't have my toothbrush. My toothbrush was in the car. Oh, my clothes are in the car. Where's my shoes? Where's my socks? Oh my God, which bathroom am I going to go in? I can't go in that bathroom. I'm going to go wash my teeth, but I can't brush my teeth because I don't have a toothbrush. Maybe rich people have some stuff behind the thing. No, there was only this. I brushed my teeth with my finger. Shut up. Shut up. Oh my God, just go outside and get your stuff. Shut up.
She wasn't wearing any pants.
Just take his pants.
She's on a private
open
estate.
I don't wake him up.
I don't understand why she didn't just use his toothbrush.
They have slept together 3
hang
times.
on. We can't gloss over that.
What?
You would use someone else's toothbrush?
They've just hooked up and she can't find another one. Why not?
No way. Would you use
I
Brian's
wouldn't
toothbrush?
know. That
In a situation like that, I think it's totally
No,
fine to use someone
I
else's
don't
toothbrush.
think so.
If you know that your toothbrush is in the car,
She doesn't have any pants.
She can take his pants.
take a blanket, take a towel,
Take a blanket.
take a cushion, take a little
Open the
curtain
cupboard,
drape or
find
something.
some of his clothes.
Oh my God.
No, I would never. Sometimes, like when I don't have my glasses on, I've picked up the toothbrush and I like put it and I'm like, and I immediately know it's not mine and I like feel disgusting.
Yeah. Erin, that's a revelation.
I'm not saying I use other people's toothbrushes, but she seems
your mitts on.
very concerned about the toothbrush. How is going to a complete other bathroom easier than just nabbing his?
Or even just like, hey man, good morning. Do you know where my stuff is? Just do that.
Yeah. Get a grip.
Yeah, you're 36, 38. Get a
But
grip.
also, and I know it was her shtick, it was her thing. Why the fuck do we care so much about the farting and the shitting? And in some ways, I liked the scene where she had that list of like words that were censored and not censored. But then, like, the obsession with the farting and the shitting, I don't care.
She was like, oh, I write jokes about farting and shitting all the time. But when it comes to actually farting and shitting, it's really embarrassing.
it's so embarrassing.
I'm so embarrassed.
I've got some advice for you, babe.
But, like, it's just yet another example of her actually not being that progressive. And, like, was that the point? Were we supposed to be like, oh, Sally's a big hypocrite, actually?
Sally, live the life you love the life you live, girl.
You know, in, like, high school at, like, grade 8 camp, and the leaders would be like, girls, don't wear makeup. And you'd be like, oh, but you're wearing makeup. No, I'm allowed to. You're not allowed to.
It's like me when I'm at work and I say you're not allowed to chew gum while I'm chewing gum.
Yeah, like,
You're a child. You'll choke on it and die.
You'll stick it under the desk.
if you're going to spend all that time trying to break down the bloody barriers of misogyny and shit about farting and shitting and all that stuff, fucking practice what you preach, babe. Shit in his toilet.
Take a mad dump.
Jesus Christ.
2024. Sally, don't be afraid anymore.
Big mud pies.
Oh my God.
There was a section of that book as well, like after that had sex, like somewhere in that period of time, I think when she was hunting for her toothbrush. And she used 3 words in like close proximity of one another, and I genuinely felt like nauseated, and they were pooped, jizzed, and nether regions, like all in the same like page. I swear to God, yuck, disgusting. And another thing, she's like having a whiff of Noah, and she described it as the mammalian smell of him. Ew!
The way she described his scent was fucked up. When she said he smelled like bread, I'm like, does he smell
That's a yeast infection. Like old beer.
Yeah, and then she was like, oh, he smells like the forest. How the fuck does he smell like the forest?
He's a murderer.
Like, weird. That's almost weirder than like the honey and almond shampoo from Icebreaker.
At least that's a nice smell. I'm picturing like Eka Petting Zoo or something.
I love bread, but I don't know that I want people to smell like bread.
When she said he smells like bread, I was picturing when you go to the can recycling place and there's just that smell of like old alcohol. I was thinking, ew.
Yeah, disgusting.
Are you really as sober as you claim to be?
Oh, when he in the letter was like, what's your relationship with alcohol? Like,
tell me now.
I get it. I really get it. But also, is there not a more chill way we could have had this conversation? What's your relationship with alcohol?
Also, when she got to his place and he was like, is it okay if we don't keep alcohol in the house? Are you comfortable with that? Who is uncomfortable by not having alcohol in their house?
More to the point, Noah, it's your house, babe.
And you've invited her. She knows that you have these addiction issues. She wouldn't have just brought like a bag of vodka. She knows.
She rocks up.
She's told you she doesn't drink that. What a stupid book. I hate this book so much.
She rocks up with a box of goon under each arm. Like, here we go.
So stupid.
Oh, God.
I know you're a recovering alcoholic, but I really want to have a cocktail by the pool. So is that okay?
But I've got some vodka and some speedballs. Let's go. Speaking of other dumb shit, what's the go with the car on the cover of the book?
That's not Sally Mills.
If that is who Sally Mills is supposed to be, she is not how she has been describing herself.
She's a hot bitch.
That's not the car she drives to California, so that doesn't make any sense either.
Is it the car that Annabelle has?
Maybe.
If it is, why? Because Annabelle's like 3 pages.
Maybe that's meant to be Annabelle. I don't know.
Why would Annabelle be on the front cover? It doesn't make any sense. Until they went back to see Jerry, I thought that Annabelle was the only redeeming person in the book.
Jerry shit himself.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, I'll throw him a bone.
And a tissue.
Also, I saw a lot of complaints in the Goodreads reviews about there being no spice in this book. I want to make the comment generally. I think spice has rotted everyone's brains. A book does not need spice to be good. Like,
wholeheartedly agree.
And the fact that people rate books based on spice rating, insane to me.
Even just the word.
Yeah.
Like, just say sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It's a sex scene. Call it sex. And if you want to read books like that, that's fine. But why would you get mad about books not having it?
Also, it's so boring to read sex scene after sex scene after sex scene.
It's repetitive.
There's only so far they can go before it's like, okay, we've seen everything, we've read everything.
Exactly.
Why are we still reading about this?
Also borderline repulsive if we're having words like nether regions thrown around. Like, do we really
After
need more of that? Yeah. Yeah, I think we have spoken about this before though, because I remember we had a discussion about like the way that the words like smut and spice, which I guess may exist to get around like censorship or like any sort of like algorithms or like moderation on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, but how those words kind of inadvertently like censor what it is or bring a level of like, maybe like, I don't know if shame is like too strong a word, but it feels very different to say, oh, I love reading books that have heaps of sex scenes. It feels very different to say that instead of saying, I love reading smutty books or whatever.
I think this book was already insufferable enough. If I had to read about Noah calling her a good girl or her calling her the biggest man she's ever slept with or some shit, like I I probably would have punched myself in the face. Like, reading about the dick pic she got sent was bad enough.
My only thought now is like, damn, I wish I made the SNL like
There's still time.
Yeah. Yeah, let's leave it at that. The end.
Let's start wrapping it up. We have to do our favourite characters. We all know Bridget's is Jerry. Laura, do you
Correct.
Do you have a favourite character?
It's got to be Jerry.
I'm going to go with Danny. Least favourite characters?
Sally.
You know, like I'm going to say Danny because I really hated his burps. Hold him in, my guy. But
I also thought it was fucked up when he burped and someone turned to Sally and was like, that was you, right? Like that bit
another
was
reason to hate him.
That bit was funny, but like, why are we reading this? I'm going to say I hate Elliot simply for that section where he says to her, oh, I hope you'll get over it one day.
What? Yeah. I would want to punch him in the face.
Presumptuous asshole. Like
9 years later.
As if her whole life revolves around him and that one crush she had on him and that everything she does has to do with him. Get a grip. Let's do the rating. So let's all say lit on 3.
You can't make me.
Little shit, Laura.
It was shit.
Little shit, Bridget.
Shit.
It was indeed shit. That's unanimous shit once again.
The shit that Sally could not do.
Secret shit.
So disappointing, actually. I really did. I was quite optimistic for this book and I really thought it's called romantic comedy. It really should be the perfect romantic Valentine's Day pick. What a doozy. What a flop. Any parting comments, Bridget?
No. I've said everything I need to say.
Bridget is a husk of the woman she once was.
And that's a wrap. Next month we are travelling to distant realms, exploring historical fiction and reading The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Make sure you subscribe to the show, and if you want to be on the same page as us, follow us at talklit.gethit on Instagram and TikTok.
Wind, my only friend.